In the last devlog, I added freeform building to the game, and it was a game changer. Machines could now be placed anywhere, not just on a boring grid.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
But that introduced a new challenge. If players can place machines wherever they want, how do you connect them efficiently? The old conveyor system relied on everything lining up neatly, but now machines could be placed anywhere and the conveyor belts just couldn't keep up. So the next step was clear. I needed to make belts that could bend. That way, no matter how a player arranges their machines, the logistic system adapts. It seems like a small thing, but it completely changes how you approach building. But getting there, yeah, let's just say it was rough. And by rough I mean the kind where it makes you want to quit. I spent weeks just trying to figure out how I was supposed to make this work. I mean, I only started gamedev not too long ago. Who was I to be tackling flexible mesh systems and spline math? I didn't even know what a mesh is until I learned 3D modeling not too long ago. I tried searching for tutorials, code snippets, anything that even resembled what I was trying to do, but there was nothing that matched my setup at all. It was one of those moments where I really started to feel the weight of solo dev. You've got this cool idea in your head, and you know what you want it to feel like in the game.
Oh my god! What is that?
But no one's handing you a blueprint. It's just you, Google, and a bunch of confusing forum posts from 10 years ago. So I decided to just brute force it. I tried writing one big script to handle everything. The bending, the mesh generation, the connections between machines. I thought if I could just get through it, maybe it would finally click. But it didn't. Every time I tried, I would end up with something that kind of worked, but also kind of broke everything else. There were always bugs, build segments stretching weirdly, connections failing, mesh data going completely insane, and the worst part, trying to fix it meant digging through thousands of lines of code. Code that I wrote, but barely understood anymore, because of how many times I had changed things, added stuff in, or renamed random variables at 3 AM as if they were the problem. Eventually, I hit a wall. I was burned out, frustrated, and completely stuck. So I stopped working on the game for a while, and that was hard. Because deep down, I already knew this game would be nearly impossible to finish, but knowing it and experiencing it are two completely different things. It wasn't just a technical problem, it was the feeling of, what if I'm not good enough to actually pull this off? After some time taking a break, I came back to it with a different and fresh mindset. This time, I decided to slow down and rethink my approach. Instead of trying to force everything into one massive tangled script, I broke it up into 3 main parts. Just that simple shift, separating responsibilities, made a huge difference. It helped me spot issues faster, made debugging way less painful, and let me actually understand what each part of the system was supposed to do. It still took me weeks to finish, but this time, it felt like I was making real progress. And to spare you from listening to me ramble about splines and mesh vertices for another 5 minutes, I'll just say it. I actually did it. So, how do you actually make a conveyor belt bend? Well, it all goes back to the original process named procedural mesh generation. Basically, you start with a 2D shape, like a square or a circle, and then duplicate that shape along a curved path called a spline. The more detail I wanted in the bend, the more points I added along the path. Then I connected each duplicated shape to the next one in line, forming the smooth bending mesh you would expect from a normal conveyor. To make that happen, I split the system into 3 parts like I mentioned earlier. The first part handles creating the spline. The actual path the conveyor will follow. I gave it a starting point and an end point, and depending on the mood, it either makes a clean angular path with 90-degree turns, or a smooth curved path that just follows between the 2 points. The second script is the one I am most proud of. It takes any 2D mesh, not just a square or a circle, but something more complex, like a conveyor segment with multiple submeshes, and stretches it along the path. It doesn't care what shape you give it. As long as it's a 2D shape, it just makes it work. That made the whole system way more flexible and future-proof. Let's say I want to make pipes for the future. All I have to do is add a circle mesh as the shape, and I already have a fully working bending pipes. And finally, the third script handles item movement. Once the path is there and the mesh is generated, this part moves items smoothly along the spline in real time, simulating how a conveyor should actually function in-game. This system took a long time to get it working, but now the system is modular, it's clean, and it gives players the freedom to build however they want, without having to fight the conveyor logic. After I finally got the conveyor system working, I decided to take things slow for a bit. Just experiment with some miscellaneous stuff for the game. I mean, how can you make a game as a hobby and not experiment? It's not like I'm expecting to finish the game anytime soon anyway. Right now, I just want to have fun and learn as much as I can along the way. So I watched a few more tutorials, this time on shaders, and decided to try making a day-night cycle. The idea was pretty simple. I would use a shader to transition the sky between day and night, and then pair that with a script to control how fast time moves. That way, you could actually see what you're working on more clearly during the day, and still have that atmospheric shift as night rolls in. I also adjusted the light intensity and colors throughout the cycle, so the sky doesn't just switch. It feels like time is passing. Oh, and I finally added post-processing effects and fog. It's a small detail, but it makes a big difference in how alive the world feels. So, for all of you who wanted Skybox, you're welcome. Anyway, after that, I kept riding that momentum and added a few more things I had been putting off. First up was a pause menu. Nothing fancy, just a clean screen with some basic options like toggling sound and adjusting volume. Except, I didn't actually have a sound system yet. So naturally, I had to make one. I threw together a pretty basic audio manager, just enough to handle background music, sound effects, and let the UI interact with volume settings. It's not super advanced or anything, but now at least the pause menu does something. Then I figured, hey, why not add a minimap? In a factory game where you're constantly placing machines and running around, it really helps to know where you are. So I built a simple minimap system that shows your position and gives you a quick overview of the world layout. It's still a work in progress, but it already makes navigation way easier. After all that experimenting, I figured it was finally time to return to the factory part of my factory game. I know, shocking. So I jumped back in by adding something pretty essential, a storage container. Up until now, items produced by machines would just kind of hang out on the conveyor forever. Which is fine if your goal is to make an infinite snake of iron plates, but not exactly practical. So I quickly modeled the basic container and hooked it up to accept items directly from builds. Now, items get stored properly once they reach the end of the line. And yes, this is a placeholder icon, and also yes, it has nothing to do with the storage container. I was lazy, okay? To finish things off, I added something that had been bugging me for a while. Proper item breaking. Before this, items just disappeared when harvested. No animation, no feedback. They just vanish into the inventory. So I decided to fix that by making tools like an axe and a mining drill and attaching it to the player. Now, instead of items disappearing into thin air, the player actually uses tools to break down resources. It's a small touch, but it adds way more clarity and feedback to the whole process. You can see what you're doing, feel the action, and it just makes interacting with the world more satisfying. Plus, it finally closes the loop. Break resources, process them in machines, store the output. It's really starting to feel like a real system. Working on this game has taught me a lot, way more than I ever expected. If I had stuck to tiny projects, I don't think I would have learned half of what I know now. Like how important clean code really is, or how jamming everything into one giant script might seem faster at first, but will 100% come back to haunt you later. Anyway, that's been it for me. Hope you enjoyed seeing all the chaos. If you did, don't forget to drop a like or a comment. It really helps way more than you think. And if you want to support me, or just see more behind the scenes and early access stuff, you can check out my Patreon. Alright, see you in the next one.